A quick introduction about Shiur and what we're going to do, and then we'll dive right into it. We meet every week. We've been doing this now for over 2 years, and we decide to dedicate about an hour and a half to text and content-based discourse. And we do this in a way that packs a lot of content in, but doesn't necessarily seek to master that content. There's a space for engaging for its own sake. And this is a Jewish tradition. The term that's used in the Jewish tradition is lishma, to learn, to engage for its own sake. And you can think of it kind of like with music, where you can experience music in different ways. You don't necessarily have to master the composition that you're listening to. You can experience it and enjoy it and kind of relieve yourself of that burden. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look through a variety of texts, and then we're going to be open. We're open to questions and comments. Feel free to raise your hand with the Zoom function. To make a comment or question, it's really awesome. Everybody here comes from their own computer, and that's not just a literal thing. It's also a metaphor. You come through from your own lens. Yet together, we're all on one screen, and that screen is, of course, the screen that you're receiving it through. And I think that's a very nice metaphor to what we're going through right now. And if you want to fully experience that, I recommend putting your camera on. I recommend going into full screen, and putting mosaic mode. And it's really cool. That way you can kind of see the variety of people that we have here. So after we go through the newsletter, we're really lucky in that a lot of the content from the newsletter comes from Rodger Kamenetz. Professor Kamenetz is with us today. So it's not every day that you can read something and have the author of it with you. And today we have an even cooler situation where the reading material, the poem that is by Rodger, is going to be read by Rodger. So usually we have to read it in lieu of the author, but here we actually have the author with us. So it'll be a really exciting, special, historic opportunity. And a big thank you to Rodger for that. So I'm going to share my screen right now to read the story.
Once upon a time, the son of a king went crazy and believed that he was the type of fowl called a turkey. And he needed to sit naked under the table and peck at crumbs of bread and bones like a turkey. All the doctors despaired from helping him and healing him, and the king was in great sorrow on account of this. Until a certain sage came and said, I take it upon myself to heal him. And the sage also stripped naked and sat under the table with the son of the king, and the two pecked at the crumbs and bones. The son of the king asked the sage, Who are you and what are you doing here? He responded, What are you doing here? The son of the king replied, I'm a turkey. The sage said, I'm also a turkey. The two sat together like this and became accustomed to one another. The sage signaled and robes were sent. And the turkey sage said to the son of the king, Do you think a turkey can go around in a robe? He can wear a robe and still be a turkey. They both dressed in the robes. After some time, he signaled and pants were sent. And the sage said, Do you think that with pants you can be a turkey? So they put a pen on pants. He did the same until they were completely dressed. After some time, he signaled and human food was given to them. You think that you can eat fine human food and still be a turkey? You can eat and still be a turkey, so they ate. After he said, Do you think that a turkey must eat under the table? We can still be turkey and eat at the table. And the sage carried on with the king's son as such until it was completely healed. The meaning of this parable is understood to those who understand.
Thank you. So it's a great parable, a great story. I ask you, how do you understand this parable? What is the mysterious underlying meaning that could be understood by those who understand? How might we understand the meaning today? now comes a very really wonderful historical. I'm very excited. We're gonna look at Turkey Talk for Reb Nachman, which is Rodger's poem that is going to be found in his upcoming book, The Missing Jew, poems from 1976 to 2022. And Rodger is going to read some excerpts from the poem. It's a really wonderful poem that I have to say, if you get it, I included a link here. Please take your time to read it. It's magnificent. And now that we've gone through the Rebbe Nachman story, hopefully you can see what brilliance he did to it. So Rodger, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed listening to the conversation and to Mickey's openness to everyone's voice. And I'm so honored to be in what feels like a worldwide symposium. It's wonderful to feel each of you in your places all here together with me. So I want to say before I begin to read that the quote from Auden that I'd sent to Mickey is very important to me, and it shows up in one of the pieces, Natural Dream Work and the Sacred and the Poetic Imagination, which I link. It's on my link tree. If you want to see the article, you can read it. Auden is talking about what made him a poet, and he says this interesting thing that poetry arises, as I think all art does, and really all of life, from certain sacred encounters that take place in primary imagination. And that imagination can operate when you're awake or when you're asleep. But when it operates when you're asleep, it's more unfettered usually, and it's a common experience of dreaming. So my dream with Rebbe Nachman, my dream date with him, was that I spent 2 or 3 years writing a book, reading all of his texts, all of his tales, a lot of his Torah. And I visited Uman, where he's buried in Ukraine, and touched his tomb and was with the people who celebrate the Jewish New Year every year there in Uman in Ukraine. And this was in about 2008, I think. And I felt that in reading his text, I wrote a book, a dual biography of Rebbe Nachman and Franz Kafka, and I felt that in reading his text over all that time and being close to his words and to his dreams, because he spoke a lot about his dreams, which is very unusual for a Hasidic master, I really felt I could speak to him in the manner of prayer. Rebbe Nachman taught that prayer should not be in a foreign language to the heart. So you might go to Mass and pray in Latin, or you might go in a synagogue and pray in Hebrew. But for Rebbe Nachman, the natural prayer language was the language of the heart. In my case, that would be English, or whatever I speak, American. So having had this experience of encounter, and also having practiced this, what's called hitbodedut, the prayer from the heart, where you basically go out and you scream and shout until talking to God, even if you don't think there is a God, you're talking to God and confessing. And this is what the Hasidim of Rebbe Nachman still do. And you can do it also in the shower or on your bed, to experience, whether you believe or don't believe, experience that you're having this conversation and that the words are coming. And after all the BS that comes out in the beginning, something genuine can come out. So in this poem, in a certain way, I'm talking to Rabbi Nachman, almost praying to him through the poem. So I'm just, Mickey kindly edited the poem down so we'd have time to do other things, and that's fine. I hope you can read it. So, Turkey Talk for Reb Nachman. You who heard angels singing in the grass, prayers in the daffodils, do you hear between the rusted hinges of closing gates, sad thumps of engines losing heart, my little prayer? I'm down here under the table, playing with crumbs and bones in the gleam destruction leaves behind. As no Kabbalist ever said, you can lick the oil from a broken shard, but don't cut your tongue. The gleaming oil, the light behind your stories. Just words? Reb Nachman, look at me now. I'm trying to dance. Even from heaven, where you study all day with the sages, it must be amusing to see my bony knees knocking, my knobby ankles shining thin skin. It's a kind of dance we make here when we tremble or shiver. It's also a dance when I make stupid jokes for the way things are, as if I were the king who set the table, when you know and I know it isn't that way, never was, just feels so good to think we make our world. You danced in Breslov to bring down the czar, but I'm trying to bring down your look into my eyes, your voice whispering and your beard scratching my earlobe. Sad prayers cough up scraggly letters, slick on the larynx, twist their way through a burning throat, parched no matter how much we drink. The fruit we stole from the tree doesn't nourish us at all. I'm bone and skin, Reb Nachman, skin and bone. Every voice is a broken radio, mixing static with holy light. Now, I'm not dancing anymore, just twitching, spattering words and slobber, a poor equivalent of a human being who dresses to disguise his sadness, which is always out of fashion. So tell me, Reb Nachman, you too, who will always be out of fashion, until stars fall out of the sky with all our eyes. What clothes can I wear for my mumbling, and how can you spare me from slipping on glistening crumbs and bones of the meal that falls from on high? Though I'm banging the back of my head against the wall and shouting behind my teeth, my head is still. I'm hardly moving. There's a dream behind my eyes that won't be seen. I hear nothing. Not even silence answers me, because no wall is thick enough to mute the noise in my mind. So, Rebbe Nachman, I'm asking you, is it true or just another story you told that when you saw a naked man gobbling under the table, a prince, son of the king, who pecked at scraps and crumbs, you tore your clothes off instantly and sat with him a long time in silence until he asked you who you were? You said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am a turkey." Is it true you turned your face to him, your whole head full of Torah, your sad brown eyes with the heavy lashes, you who knew exactly how long the journey is from under the table, how hard to return? Did you say, "Yes, I am a turkey too"? So you slowly healed him, or he healed you, or did you? Did he? Is there ever healing in a world always breaking? Is there a wise man who heals? Is there even a table? And is there really a king? This is the sad prayer coughed up my throat, my turkey gobble. But can you make any sense of belief that doesn't believe? Or why else do I talk to you inside my mind?
Thank you.
So, yeah, sure. Thank you all for listening. So I'm not sure that I want to comment too much on the different interpretations, except to say there's a different approach to the tale. I'm not going to roll out, I mean, you can roll out all kinds of things about the tradition of parables, the Jewish tradition of parables that most of the world knows through the parables of Jesus, but there's a rabbinic tradition of parables going back to the 3rd century and a Hasidic tradition in Nachman's time. And in almost all the parables, the king is the king. No question about that. And therefore, the king's table is the world as it might be, but most of us are living under the table, pecking at the crumbs of success or esteem or pride or whatever fills you. And we don't ever even imagine there's any other way to live. That's how I understand the tale. And therefore, as I think Sarid and another person suggested, I suppose I believe that the wise man is not perfidious in any way, but rather is making a descent that he knows, he must know from his own descent, for we've all been under the table. We've all been broken. We've all been disillusioned. And Rebbe Nachman clearly more than most. And so we all understand these moments when we're entirely broken and can't imagine anything else. And we need someone who knows. We can't be healed from on high by the doctors who have professional degrees and know all the, or the professors. I was a professor once. You can't be healed by the wisdom that comes from on high. That won't heal you. You can't be healed by stuff in books. That won't heal you. You can only be healed in that circumstance by the direct sacred encounter where another person is willing to strip off all of his authority, all of his outward clothing, and just be with you in your pain and your suffering, and to say, yes, I'm a turkey too. And that's how I understand, obviously, from the poem, what's going on. And I couldn't have written that poem if I hadn't been under the table myself. And I couldn't have understood what it meant to be healed if I hadn't been healed myself. And the work I do in dreams is really about that. It's really about how, by learning to just be with the experiences in dreams that carry so much feeling, we can heal what Wordsworth called the impaired imagination. I love the way Wordsworth talks about it, that what other people called neurosis, or, I don't know, take this pill or that pill or whatever the therapy is, he understood it as impaired imagination, that when you're depressed or broken, you just can't imagine anything else for yourself. And so, in a sense, your imaginative function has been impaired. And so it turns out that, guess what? Images can heal the impaired imagination. I talk about that at great length in, 18 pages in the essay that's on the link tree. It's called, I think I mentioned it, Natural Dream Work and the Poetic Imagination. And you can download that and read it if you want to see it. But I'm trying to make the case that we don't need diagnosis. We don't need medicine of any kind, including what's called medicine these days. Really, they can help alleviate the momentary difficulty, but what we really need is compassion and love from someone else to lift us back up. And Our dreams show us this. They show us so much. They give us so many experiences, both of terror and brokenness and of love. And I want to give an example of that. I'm not sure, maybe Mickey will tell me. I have no idea where we are on the clock here, so it may be very late. But I just wanted to share a dream that I think rhymes with the poem, or with what we've been talking about, this sacred encounter between the Chacham, the wise man, and the prince, the turkey, who thinks he's a turkey, just to give a sense of how that might work. And this, I'll have to hit the share screen. So hold on one second and see if I can find the right text and not share something you don't want to see. Let's see. What are we seeing? I don't see the share. Oh, are we seeing the text? Okay, I think we are.
Yeah, we see Joe, that you and Joe are
Yeah.
Kathy's sisters.
No, I'm not the I. I'm not the I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been doing this. I've been writing poetry since I was 15. I've been publishing poetry and prose. I wrote a number of different kinds of books on Jewish experience, but about in 2007, I published a book called The History of Last Night's Dream, because I was always fascinated with dreams, and also when the Jewish group met with the Tibetans in Dharamsala, I describe in The Jew and the Lotus. I was so impressed with the way Tibetans understood themselves as relating to images. We all know that Tibetan people do visualization. Tibetan Buddhism is very much involved with visualization. And I wanted to find out if there was anything in the Jewish tradition like that. And I got sent to Jerusalem to work with a teacher named Colette Abouker Muscat. And eventually I found my way to a dream teacher in Vermont who had been a postman. He seemed perfect for me to talk to because he was down to earth. And he taught me his way of working with dreams. And I describe that in the book. I got to work with a lot of people after the book came out. And so I've learned a little bit more about dreams I've done my 10,000 hours. I spent those hours one-on-one with people and their dreams, in their brokenness, in their nakedness, in their foibles, but also in their joy and in their love. So this is a dream from one of my friends, client, who was dying over the past month, and we had been seeing each other every day for 11 years. I mean, not every day, I'm sorry, every week for 11 years. And even, and she grew and I grew so much in the sacred encounter that we were having by just talking with her dreams. And she brought that dream work into hospice work. And even at the end of her life, she'd published in the Journal of Palliative Medicine. She was a former high school Spanish teacher, but through her dreams, she kind of grew into this incredible teacher on her own right. But this is a dream she had that we both agreed was important. And I think it touches on some of what Mickey was talking about what kind of language do we need to bring to the moment. I think he'd mentioned, there's a piece, I wrote it down. Mickey said, we have these experiences and dreams, and then we look for a word that reflects what is, but how? He kind of threw up his hands, right? Maybe that's the job of the poet. Well, I also think that very dilemma of confronting intense pain, like the pain of the Turkey prince, or intense suffering of any kind, and what do you say? How can you be with someone who's dying? How can you be with someone who's in pain? I think that's what the parable is about in part. And maybe this dream's about that one. I'll let you decide. But the speaker is actually my friend Mary Jo. So Joe and I are at Kathy's sister's home in Thibodeau. We had done retreats in the countryside in Louisiana. Kathy's leaving. We're the only ones there because we have a long drive, so we're spending the night. She shows us huge blocks of cheese that she says we can have. They are wonderful. Okay, so Mary Jo was really a gourmand and gourmet, I guess you could say. She loved food. A few moments later, though, Kathy's sister walks in, looks at the cheese and says she wants it, that she will divide it up between the family. I don't want to share this cheese, but it's her house. I end up with a little baggie of cheese. So I think if I ask you to understand that moment of having the cheese taken away, you probably can feel it. You might wonder, well, gee, okay, what's the big deal? But at least you could feel the sense I was given something, then no, it was taken away by this other female figure. If you knew Mary Jo's life history and that she had a mother who was constantly doing this, constantly taking things away from her in just this way, then the resonance would be even deeper, I think. So there's this moment, the first moment in the dream of encounters when this figure basically takes her cheese away, and then she has to deal with the feeling, the poverty, right? Of, oh, I only can get a little bit. I can't get much, which is the crumb. These are the crumbs. These are like the crumbs of the turkey prince in some way, right? I'll settle for the crumbs. That's all I deserve. That's the way I was treated by my parents or by others. So I've come to accept, yeah, I'll just get the little baggie, and I'll learn to talk myself into saying that's okay. I'll forget that what I really loved was the wonderfulness of the huge block and the generosity. I'll just tamp that down. I'll interpret that away. Okay, now there's a second part. I go into a back room where there are other people, and I pick up my phone. One did I hear Kathy talking with Rodger. That's me. It's their session. I know I should hang up, but I listen for a moment. Kathy's voice is pained as she speaks, and I hear Rodger right there with her. Okay, so I'm glad she saw me that way in her dreams. Sometimes people I work with don't see me in such a flattering way in their dreams, but I try to be the kind of person I can be so I can be good in their dreams. And in this moment of hearing the pain in one person's voice and the way that Rodger, as kind of the dream worker, is with her, something happens. Something happens, right? Remember, the backdrop is this pain that isn't, of accepting the little bag of cheese, but then this happens. So maybe there's some other way to be with my pain. Maybe there's some other way to be with my hurt. A woman runs in the room and says, Grandpa is dying. I follow her and say to the room in general, call 911. Now, I don't have time to interpret or go into that, but it's kind of interesting, but doesn't matter. We go into a bedroom where there are two beds. On one is a large figure completely covered in the bedspread. On the other is a little girl, 6 or 7, blonde, bright, smiling face. I notice she is lying in feces. Okay, so talk about the turkey again. This is really what it is. To be in the crumbs, to be in your shit, to be in this low place. That's really what that's about. And she's the girl. She's really represents a part of each of us that can get lost in the world, a part that needs love. There's a part of the soul that longs for, needs love. In dreams, unfortunately, dreams are very gendered. And maybe that's going to change. I don't know. But in the dreams of the people I see, there's boy and there's girl, and girl is almost always the part that understands that to live without love is just a terrible way to live. I notice she's lying in feces. I go over to her, kneel by the bed and say, hey. We talk quietly and she's so sweet and precious to me. Hey. Now, Mary Jo was a woman who could write really well. Something I guess we had in common, that we were into writing. And yet notice the simplicity of the encounter. This is another sacred encounter, a real sacred encounter. And the girl, and I would make a parallel with Nachman's tale, right? The girl is in a bad place. She's beautiful, but she's lying in her own shit. What do you do? How do you, as the healer, as the one who feels with your own pain what's happening to her, how do you approach her? Do you come in with a lot of words? Do you start cleaning her up because you have to do something? How do you respond, or how do you react? And I just want to say that this way of acting, when you're with someone who's in pain, it's so beautiful, because it's as close to silence as you can get. It's really about presence. And so I'm trying to suggest that both Nachman's tale and this dream are really pointing at much the same thing, which really is, how do we do the encounter? How do we make it holy, even when we see people are in pain? People are lost when they don't know who they are or what they deserve. Yeah, to say, I wrote a book about how, Reb Zalman met with the Dalai Lama, and they're very holy people, and they have this high level sacred encounter. But how do you do the sacred encounter with anyone? And how can you be with another person? Well, our dreams can show us that. We can be both on the giving end, as in this dream, or on the receiving end. And when we're on the receiving end, when we meet the wise woman or the wise man or the numinous figure who blesses us with presence, and we feel that awe that Auden's talking about, that wonder and that sense of sacredness in that encounter, and we deepen it. We don't skip over it. And part of the work I do with dreams is to get people not to do drive-bys, not to skip. Wait a minute, what happened there? You're going on to something else. You're talking about a book or something. Let's come back here. What happened right here? Let's stop. Let's bring the dream to life. I want you to see it. I want you to feel it. I want you to tell me what his face looked like when he smiled at you. And by deepening the moment, we move out of the horizontal linear time to the vertical, to the depth of time, where time actually stops and wells, where it stops and wells and heals. And that's the medicine in the dream. So I think I'll stop with all that. And if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But
of course, for being here, but also for your clarity of how you communicate what you're doing. It's such a innovative and powerful project, if you can call it that. And
sure.
I think it's something that, wow. I'll start with a question while people can start raising. If you want to raise your hand, guys, do it on the Zoom app.
Oh, let me stop the share. So we can
Great.
go back to
so what we'll do is we'll have Q&A now, and then we'll just have some concluding words, and then of course Rodger will answer, and then we'll do concluding words, and I think we should be done in about 20 minutes or so. So my question for you, Rodger, is you write about this natural medicine, and I'm curious about if you can comment more about that, like the healing property of letting the dreams do their work. And what would be like the wrong way versus the right way, in your opinion, to respond to a dream?
Okay. So thanks for that question. Good question. So I would say our work natural dream work, and we have a website, thenaturaldream.com, and you can read all kinds of material there and learn more about it. And I also invite you to try it. Get in touch with me, and you can try it with someone, because that's, who cares about the theory of it? Like, you do it, and then you find out, oh, this works for me, it doesn't work for me, whatever. I'm only saying that out of the frustration and our own tendency to talk over things instead of experiencing them. You can't talk your way, how do you learn to ride a bike? You have to fall off a few times, you have to do it. All right, so to Mickey's question, dreams give us experiences where we encounter people. Let's say you dream, a guy comes into your house and you don't know him. He came in behind the mailman and he's wandering around your house and starting to pick up things. And like you're saying, what are you doing in my, you're starting to get ticked off. And then as you get more and more angry, you finally say, get the hell out of here. This could happen in waking life too, right? So immediately the guy comes right up to you and puts a pistol on your throat where you spoke from. And suddenly, and like you're in terror. So that's the gift of the dream, terror. And what you understand is that your reaction to him, your anxiety about what he was doing, which turned into anger to drive him out, underneath that anxiety is actually the experience of terror, which we rarely experience. We don't understand our terror. We don't understand that we have a feeling of terror that we disperse into all kinds of anxieties. So when the guy in the dream is, the homeowner is reacting, and then call that a reaction, right, with his anxiety, and then he finally screams at the guy answers him in such a way that he now has a feeling instead of a reaction. So what dreams do is show us the difference between feeling and reaction. Our vocabulary, we have all this fancy philosophical and intellectual vocabulary. Most people don't know squat about their feelings or how to name them even. One time I was working with a client and I said, well, what did you feel right there? And he said, well, he was struggling. And he said, finally, could you give me a list? Like he was looking for a checklist. And we've lost touch. Well, when the pistol's at your throat in the dream, you're given an experience of feeling that's existential and phenomenological. It's happening. And therefore it's embodied. And therefore you don't need the words. You can just say, well, I feel the way I felt when the pistol was at my throat. I mean, I can call that terror, but the point I'm making is dreams give us a vivid album, an anthology of feelings, of reactions, and sadly, of numbness. I would say a lot of the people at random that I meet or encounter with their dreams in the beginning, they're not reactive necessarily. Maybe they are. They're not feeling very much, but there's a lot of numbness, a lot of inability to feel, a lot of going into their heads, a lot of, immediately jumping away. So, with a dialogue with someone else who kind of knows the terrain, you can find your way to the feelings in your dreams. And by experiencing the feelings, then you experience the medicine. And the medicine is deeper way of feeling, living from your feelings and not from your reactions. So that's a short answer.
Thank you.
Or it was a pretty long answer, actually. Sorry.
Thank you. That's a really powerful idea. This, in a dream, we somehow are surrendering to this rich variety of emotions and feelings in a way that we're oftentimes encumbered in not real life. I won't say real life anymore, Rodger. In waking. Okay, yeah. We have some questions here. Frank in Buenos Aires, and then Yoni in New York. Frank.
Hi, Rodger. Thank you for your presentation. Quite interesting. I wanted to ask you if can you classify dream as a form of, I guess, as a form of art, and it's you telling or narrating a story about your imaginations or about your feelings. Would you classify it as a form of art? I'm speaking from experience. Sometimes most of my dreams are me telling a story and I'm in the story. And I feel like, it's a movie that I've created. I'm in it, and I've created a movie, but I'm in it. And sometimes there's even a sense of humor that I don't know existed in me. So I'm asking you, do you classify it as a form of art?
I'm thinking. Thank you, Frank. Buenos Aires, by the way, is of course the home of Borges, who gave me this wonderful quote about the most people talk about interpreting dreams, and I've read all sorts of books and I find them disappointing because what all the psychology books never do is speak to the most important question, the fact of the dream. So homage to Buenos Aires and to Borges. What I would love to do, Frank, is to spend a half hour with you in your dream. I would get more of a texture and a sense of what you're describing a little bit in summary. I always work with the particulars of an individual dream to fully understand. And in a way, I've learned how to be in the dream myself with you. And then I could understand better. But so that said, I would say that in dreams, sometimes we see things on a screen. And that's a different experience, we would all admit, watching something on a screen and having it happen right in front of you. Sometimes in a dream, the lion is breathing on your face. I had a client who gave me such a dream recently. And sometimes we see the lion far, far away, or maybe we see the lion and we're on a balcony looking down. So I would say the degree of mediation, if you could follow me here, how far away I am in distance and in time, how much time I spent, duration, and how much mediation there is, tells me how close I am to the feeling. And what we're talking about is that in the dream of Mary Jo's, she's right there at the girl's bedside. It's not happening in a story, it's happening. She's in the story. Okay, do you see the difference? So we have to be careful about that, to make that distinction. I remember once actually with Mary Jo where she dreamed that she saw two elks. One was goring the other in the belly, but she saw it from on top of a balcony looking down. And after a certain amount of time of working with her, I said, well, what do you feel? Because in the dream, she expressed anger at somebody for something else. So I said, well, what do you feel? And anger in that case is a reaction. So I wanted to move her to a feeling. So I said, well, could you come down off the balcony? Yeah. Could you walk closer to the elks scoring each other? Could you be right there? Okay. So she was able to do that. Not everybody can. I understand that. But she was. Watch that happen. Watch the goring going on. The stomach being open, the blood spurting. Watch that in its materiality and its visceral quality. Now, what feeling comes up? Okay, so she knew the feeling, and it was pain. So she knew something. She had this incredible pain. I mean, she thought she was over the pain, that stuff that happened to her childhood, she'd overcome it, but there was still wound. There was still pain in her dream. All I had to do was move her closer to it and have her spend more time with it. So a dream, the Kabbalists talk about a 5-dimensional space, but dreams are a 5-dimensional space. 4 dimensions of space-time and 1 of feeling. So it's space-time feeling. And every dream, the closer you get to the experience and the longer you stay there, the more deeply you can feel it. Okay. So Frank, I didn't answer your initial question. Can dreams be a work?
Yoni, let me get it quickly. I'll expand on this, and don't need to take anybody's down. But It's basically what I was trying to get at. It's a story that you're writing. You either in the story or you're writing from far away. That's the
Right.
feeling usually I get. So this is why I'm using the word art, maybe probably being the proper term, but it's exactly what you're speaking of. It's either you're in the story, a story that you've created, or
Right.
a story that at times that you've created, but you look at it from far away.
Well, I think you're saying something really important there, and I just want to touch into that, which is, I mean, the short answer is dreams aren't usually art. I've tried, believe me, I've tried to make dreams into poems, and it almost never works. The reason is that art, as Auden says, art arises out of an experience of sacred encounter, but then the artist has to bring in what they call secondary imagination, which is your awareness of styles and technique and skills and so forth, whatever art form you're working in. So a work of art is a little different from the dream. I'll say that. I think the surrealists were way off base there. Nothing's more boring than reading a dream, although I like it because I enjoy it. But Frank, you're talking about the horizontal and the vertical, and I'll say it this way. The ego, the I, the sense of I, is actually a story-making mechanism. And it's constantly doing that at every level of experience. It's constantly making up stories like, oh, she looked away. She doesn't like me. That's a story. I don't know whether she likes me or not, but I see something in her face and I make an interpretation. She doesn't like me. That's a story. So we're making up stories short term, like almost at every minute. Like, that guy over there, is he dangerous? We're making up stories all the time and then dropping them, right? So those stories are self-interested. That's why I say the ego is a story-making mechanism. They include the I as the owner and possessor of experience, and as you might say, the I is what controls experience, and the I makes up stories to do that, because the I secretly suggests understands that it might not be real. So it has to bolster itself by making itself either the star of every story, people like that, or the schlemiel of every story. It doesn't really matter whether you make yourself into the king of or queen of every story or a piece of crap. Either way, the I is the star. The I is the most important thing. So if you happen to be of a disposition to put yourself down all the time, that's also in a certain way egotistical, right? Okay, I was muted.
I will.
Yeah, that was accidental. Sorry. We have to.
That's okay. I'll stop there. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. All I want to say, one thing is that the events in the dream are the vertical. So to answer Frank, the things that are happening, things you sense in dreams that you see and hear, are the vertical or the real imagination. The things you think about those events are the horizontal. That's the ego or dream point of view.
Great. I'm just mindful of time. I hate having to, but we're really grateful for everybody's time. We can do one last round of questions. I see Yoni has his hand up. If anybody else, put your hands up, and let's maybe I'll call on everybody to say their questions, and then Rodger can give a concluding, response to all of them together. Okay, Yoni.
Yes, thank you, Rodger, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. My question is, we mostly talk about dreaming as in like a passive sense, as these stories we receive and try to make sense of. And I'm curious what you think about like the opposite approach. I've never experienced lucid dreaming, but kind of you using our dreams to explore things in a more active way, if that's even possible.
Well, that word use came up earlier, didn't it? And things of use are in the horizontal and they're worldly. And I would suggest that instead of trying to, I'm not a big fan of lucid dreaming unless you're an enlightened Buddhist practitioner, then it's fine. But if you're not that, your ego is going to be the part that's going to control the dream. Dreams are a natural resource. They occur naturally. Why do we want to bring our ego control mechanism into that. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to control our dreams? I don't think it's a great idea. I rather would prefer to stand in wonder and amazement at what the dreams bring me. But I think, yeah, basically, I get the idea. I'm just saying dreams could heal us. So why would I want to disallow what the dream, I mean, like let's say that dream I told about the guy with the gun, you know, with lucid dreaming, I could pull it and say, oh, I have a gun too, right? And then we have a shootout or some Western movie or something. But I would have ruined the dream. I would have missed the opportunity to feel the pain or the terror. You see what I'm saying? So do I know from my point of view what's best to be in my dream? How do I know? I don't know. I'll let the imagination supply what should be in my dream. It's always more profound than anything I personally could have come up with my waking consciousness.
Thank you. I love that perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anne in France.
Thank you for the newsletter and the presentation. I was asking myself, what about being aware that you dream and then change the way of how your dream goes, or to influence what you are doing? I heard a podcast the other day about being aware in your dream that by recalling during the day that this is reality, and then the night after I dreamt and I realized I was dreaming, and I suddenly got all the superpowers. It was so much fun.
Right.
I could do things like, or what about even not realizing and flying and having, you say dreams are a natural source earlier, you said.
Resource, yeah.
Resource. Maybe we have some nice resources as well, not only bad ones, but nice ones where you can experience also, as you said, some joy, and go into the extremes, maybe. I don't know how to. What's your experience on that?
So let me get Rodger, let me get everybody's questions now.
Okay.
And then we can do
a lightning round, right? Okay.
Yeah, lightning round, because it doesn't feel like it. It went very quick, but we're almost 2 hours in. It's an hour and 40 minutes in. So I see Seth and Ophelia. Seth?
Hi, thank you. I have a lot of questions, so I'll just start with one and maybe contact you after. You mentioned that we have 5 or 6 dreams per night, and I'm one of those people that I very rarely remember my dreams. So I guess maybe just to start with that, is there a way of connecting more or a way of remembering more of our dreams? And I guess the other things I'll contact you about separately.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And Ophelia.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very emotional and touching. So my question is, what happens when the dream like never ends? Like the past weeks, for example, it's like I have nightmares every night, but then when I wake up, like it's not like the emotion doesn't end. Like I carry the emotions with me, and it's just an ongoing terror, like 24/7, which is quite new. But yeah, like there's no like, okay, this was just a dream and now I go into my like waking life. It's just like a constant nightmare, and they're just like kind of like interlinked. And yeah.
So let me answer in reverse order. Ophelia, first of all, it's kind of a tender conversation in a way, and I don't want to. I want to be cautious because I don't know you, but obviously what you're saying is that the terror in your dreams lingers afterwards, and it may you didn't quite say it this way, but maybe creates a difficulty, even like I can't focus on anything else, or it keeps coming back and maybe it's too much. So that can happen over time. That's why I think when I work with people in their dreams, I try to support them to feel their feelings, but I also try to teach them a little bit how to be with their feelings, which is, to say, yeah, it's a feeling. There's a feeling of terror in my dream, and actually it touches into something. And I wonder, it usually doesn't last forever, but it may be difficult for a time. That's all I could really say, in brief. But that can happen for sure. So Seth, one good way to remember dreams is to remember some dreams you do remember, write them down, study them before you go to bed. I found that little trick helps a lot, because when you immerse yourself in your own dream material, it somehow stimulates the ability to dream. Also, don't have too high a bar as to what remembering a dream is. If you can, I describe in the history of last night's dream how at first all I could remember was crickets. I wrote the word crickets down, but the guy I was working with really made something of those crickets in combination with some images from other dreams. So if we don't value our dreams, we find, have no use for them in the sense of caring about them, naturally they're going to be evanescent and not stay with us. But if we come to value our dreams, more and more the relationship, you get better and better at remembering them. So it's a process, practice, There are other little tricks, but that's the basic. For An, I would say that in a way her question was similar to Frank's, but using slightly different language about a sense of lucid dreaming. And you heard a suggestion, I guess, on the radio or somewhere about how that might be accomplished. And yeah, you can do it. And yeah, I'm not against fun. I've had flying dreams. They are fun. I was on Oprah Winfrey's show, and she shared this dream that she thought was great fun, where she was flying and there were children running underneath her saying something. And she said to me, as she told me the dream, which she considered to be a great dream, but I was afraid of getting too close because I might hurt the children. So suddenly I knew, well, why were you afraid of hurting children unless you were a child who'd been hurt, right? So even in a dream that's fun, there could be a depth that you're overlooking if you're trying to focus just on the fun. But generally flying dreams are fun, nothing wrong with them, but they're very mental, very much in the element of air. And the deeper dreams are not when we're flying away from everybody, but when we're encountering others, in my opinion, because I think dreams are ultimately about relationship. But yeah, they could be fun. Don't let me spoil your fun. They are fun, and that's fine. And they can be creative. There's a lot of things you can do with dreams. I'm only talking about one particular thing you can do with dreams that could be helpful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Rodger. And I also want to publicly thank Ekuj in Paris.
Say what? I'm sorry.
I said thank you, and I want to thank Ekuj in Paris, the organization that introduced us, and Kinga, who works there.
Yes.
Participated. For those of you that are new here, we do this every week. We go through the newsletter, and as you'll see in the newsletter, there's a lot of stuff on there, a lot of content, practices to do. This week's practice is to follow Rodger's guidance and to explore dreams through the emotions and feelings they evoke, to avoid Freudian and Jungian detective roles, and instead accept and explore how to refine and articulate what you felt. Decentralize waking life. Give dreams their space. So that's for this week. Every week, you can look in the newsletter, the movie to watch, Alain Robbe-Grier's Successive Sightings of Pleasure. It's a 1974 film. Really amazing film, very powerful. and explore it through Rodger's perspectives of dreams. It's a really powerful experience to do. And I just want to conclude with some words here. I think it's interesting in that I think everybody here, in some ways, we're all turkeys, to return to the Reb Nachman story. And maybe some of us are at the crumbs sometimes, and other times we're at the top of the table. And maybe you have different ways of dealing with that story, and that's what's nice, is that we're all here. Some of us might want to turn the tables over. Others want to get on top or to go back below. And I think that maybe if we take this attitude of working with the story, of working with the emotions, working with the visuals, the same way how we're exploring this in the different ways of looking at a text or at a dream. Perhaps if we take this broadened attitude towards our own life, there's so much waiting for us. And we just haven't yet given ourselves a space to experience that richness and to see where it takes us. So I hope that all of you have an incredible rest of day, night, wherever you are in the world, rest of week, where you find another turkey, and then we'll all eat together. Maybe for me, I don't want to have any tables, but on a table, below the table, whatever is right. So big thank you to Rodger again for that incredible, inspiring speech. Please, guys, you can find a lot of information on Rodger's writings and his dream work online on the website. We included it in the newsletter. And we can continue the conversation on the Shiur community Slack and in other places too. Have a great week. Please invite your friends. We love having new perspectives. So come join us next week, Wednesday, same time as usual. We're going to have Daria present, and the week after, Philip Piatov. We have many people in line, and we're always looking for more people. So have a great week, guys. Sending you lots of love. Best regards from Utrecht, and see you next week. Bye.